Assalamu alaikum. I'm Samin Arif with an English lesson from New Oxford Modern English Book 4. We will read Unit 2, that is Pip Meets a Convict, that is taken from novel Great Expectations written by Charles Dickens. First, let us have a look at words to know. Number 1, battery, a fort. A fort is a castle or fortress. Number 2, blacksmith, a person who creates tools and objects out of metal. Number 3, churchyard, the area around a church used for burials, usually full of tombstones. You can say it's a graveyard or cemetery. Number 4, coarse. Coarse means rough. Any surface that is not smooth or plain. Convict, prisoner. Who is a prisoner? A person who has committed a crime and is being punished. File, a metal tool with a rough edge or surface used for cutting or smoothing hard material. It's a hand tool which has hardened surface and series of sharp parallel teeth. Grub, a slang word for food. Marsh, a wetland area by water usually covered in small plants. You can see in the picture. Nettles, a weed that stings skin when touched because it has sharp edges. Often, a child whose parents are dead. Ravenously, eating fast due to greed or hunger. So when you are so much hungry, you eat so quickly. That is ravenously. Tombstone, a large flat stone standing or laid over a grave, usually on which the name of the deceased person, its date of birth and death are mentioned. Weathercock, a device in the shape of a cockerel used to show which way the wind is blowing. You can see in the picture the directions are given north, west, east and south. Wilderness, a natural space that has not been shaped or lived in by people. Let's begin reading. My father's family name is Pirp and my first name Philip. But as a child I couldn't say either. So I called myself Pip and then so did everyone else. I say that my name is Pirp because that's what is written on my father's tombstone. And it is what my sister told me. My sister is married to the blacksmith. Alright, students, in the given lines, the boy is introducing himself. He is telling us that his real name, that is Philip Pip, but instead he called himself Pip. Isn't it such a nice name? Okay, further, he tells about how he came to know about his father's name. He read that name on his father's tombstone and also his sister told him. Then he tells about his sister who is married to the blacksmith. We lived in a marshy area down by the river a few miles from the sea. One day I stood in the churchyard and looked over my parents' tombstone at the dark, flat wilderness beyond the churchyard. The marshes were crisscrossed with ditches and mounds. In the distance, I could see the grey line of the river and then, far away, the sea. It was a cold day. Now, in this paragraph, he is telling about his surroundings and where he lives. He lives near the river, few miles away from the sea. And it is a wet area. He also explains about his parents' churchyard that is somewhere near his house. From there he could see the marshes that were in a crisscross pattern with ditches and mounds. From there he could also see the grey line of the river. Now here you can see the difficult word crisscrossed, which means form a pattern of intersecting lines. The next new vocabulary word is ditches. That is a narrow channel dug at the side of a road or field to hold or carry away water. Mounds, a rounded mass projecting above a surface. The grey land and the grey sky made me feel sad. I suddenly realized that I was an orphan and I began to cry. Hold your noise, cried a terrible voice. Terrible means extremely bad. It came from a man who had just stepped out from behind a gravestone. Keep still, or I'll cut your throat. This man was frightening. He was dressed in rough grey clothes and he had a big iron chain on his leg. He was an escaped convict. Escaped means break from captivity or control. His shoes were broken and he had an old rag tied around his head. He was dirty from being soaked in the muddy water from the ditches. Soaked means absorb a liquid. He was covered in scratches from nettles and stones. He limped and shivered. Limped means walking with difficulty and shivered means shake slightly because of the cold he was shaking. And glared and growled. Glared means to stare in an angry way and growled means to make a low, harsh, rumbling sound. His teeth chattered in his head as he seized me by the chin. Chattered means teeth clicked together because he was feeling cold. And seized means take hold of something suddenly and forcibly. Oh, don't cut my throat, sir, I pleaded in terror. Pleaded mean an emotional appeal. Tell me your name, said the man. Quick! Pip, sir. Once more, said the man, staring at me. Louder. Staring means look with concentration and eyes wide open. Alright children, next Pip is telling us that because of the cold day and grey sky and the grey land, he is not feeling very good. He's gloomy and sad and all alone. And then he hears a voice of a stranger who appears from behind the gravestone. That stranger tells him not to make noise and threatens him if he does it, he will cut his throat. Okay, and who was the stranger? He was actually a convict who escaped from a prison and now, can you see how does he look like? His shoes were broken and you can see an old rag tied around his head. What else? He had mud all over and scratches from nettles and stones. What else? He was shivering from cold and he had held Pip by his chin. Then what happened? Pip got frightened and he cried in terror and asked him not to cut his throat. The stranger then asked his name in loud voice while staring at him. Pip, Pip, sir, show me where you live, said the man. Point out the place. I pointed to where our village lay, a mile from the church. Alright students, next Pip has told his name to the stranger and as he asked him his place, Pip pointed towards the place where he lives. The man looked at me closely. Then he turned me upside down and emptied my pockets. There was nothing in them but a piece of bread. The upside down view of the church righted itself when he placed me on a high tombstone. I sat trembling while he ate the bread ravenously. Trembling means shaking because of cold or fear. Now look here, said the man. Where are your parents? There, sir, said I. The man jumped and made a short run, but then he stopped and looked over his shoulder. There, sir, I timidly said, pointing to the tombstone. Timidly means not bravely or confidently. Alright, now, what happened with the boy? The stranger turned him upside down. He emptied his pockets. He just found a piece of bread which he ate quickly as he was feeling hungry. Then he asked about his parents. As his parents were dead, he pointed towards the tombstone. Oh, said the man. So, who do you live with? If I let you live, which I haven't made my mind about. My sister, sir, Mrs. Joe Gargery, wife of Joe Gargery, the blacksmith, sir. Blacksmith, said he, and looked down at his leg. After looking at his leg and me several times, he took me by both arms and tilted me back as far as he could hold me. Then he stared into my eyes. Now look here, he said. I need to decide if I will let you live. Do you know what a file is? Okay, next the stranger is asking Pip with whom he lives. Pip told him that he lives with his sister, who is the wife of the blacksmith, Mr. Joe Gargery. As you can see in the picture, the convict's feet are tied with a chain, so he immediately got an idea after hearing that Pip's sister's husband is a blacksmith. He asked him what a file is. Yes, sir. And do you know what grub is? Yes, sir. After each question, he tilted me over a little more. Tilted means slope, slant, or incline. This made me feel helpless. I was in danger. You get me a file, he tilted me again, and you get me grub, he tilted me again. You bring them both to me, he tilted me again, or I'll have your heart and liver out, he tilted me again. I was dreadfully frightened and hoped that he would not drop me. Dreadfully means extremely. I clung to him with both hands. Clung means to hold on tightly. He dipped me backwards and rolled me round so that the church seemed to jump over its own weathercock. Then, still holding me up on the tombstone, he went on. Early tomorrow morning, bring that file and the grub. You bring the lot to me at that old battery over there. If you do it and you don't say a word about me, I will let you live. If you fail or say anything at all about me, then your heart and your liver shall be torn out, roasted, and eaten. Now I'm not alone. There's a young man hiding with me. In comparison with him, I'm an angel. Comparison means the action of comparing. So Pip tells him that he knows what a file and grub is. So he threatens him to bring the file and the grub tomorrow morning at the old battery. He further threatens him that there is one more stranger who is hiding with him, who is even more dreadful than the convict himself. That young man can hear us now. That young man has a secret way of getting at a boy and at his heart and at his liver. A boy can't hide himself from that young man. A boy may lock his door, may be warm in bed, may tuck himself up, may draw the clothes all over his head, may think himself comfortable and safe, but that young man will softly creep his way to him and tear him open. Tuck means to make someone secure in bed by tucking the edges of sheets or blanket, and creep means move slowly or cautiously. I'm keeping that young man from harming you at the present moment with great difficulty. I find it very hard to hold that young man off of your inside. Now, what do you say? I was so frightened, but I said that I would get him the file and I would get him what broken bits of food I could. And I would come to him at the battery early in the morning. Promise on your life, said the man. I promised, and he took me down from the top of the tombstone. Now, he went on, remember that promise and remember that young man and get home. Good night, sir, I stammered. Stammered means speak or say with difficulty. Okay, now in the given lines, we can see that the convict is trying to scare him by telling him about the young man. He even tells him that even if he locks himself in room, the young man could get inside and will creep his way to Pip. He would harm him and will tear him apart. So remember, bring the grub and the file to the battery. It is going to be a long night for me, said he. He looked at the cold, wet, flat marsh. I wished I was a frog or an eel. Eel is a snake-like fish. He hugged his shuddering body in both his arms as if to hold himself together and limped towards the low church wall. Shuddering means tremble or shaking violently, and limp means walk with difficulty. He got over it slowly, like a man whose legs were numbed and stiff, and then turned round to look for me. When I saw him turning, I was frightened again and ran home without stopping. Numb means having no sensation or lack of power to feel, and stiff means unable to move easily. Okay. So the convict wished that he was a frog or an eel by looking at the cold wet marsh, as frog lives in marshy areas and eel in water. He was walking with difficulty as his legs were numbed and he was shivering. When he turned and looked at Pip, Pip ran without stopping. So let us see about the author. Charles Dickens is known as the greatest writer of the Victorian era. He wrote a huge number of novels and stories that were very popular in his lifetime and that remain popular to this day. He was known for creating wonderful characters. Dickens wanted the world he lived in to change for the better. He campaigned for children's rights, education, and the reformation of society and to make it more equal. I hope you understood and enjoyed the story.